Tonight on CFTK-TV News, the physical move into the new Terrace Hospital will happen sooner than expected. Smithers was recently the host of a hockey training camp, and Vancouver's homeless population could drastically jump even higher.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin, and here's what's making the news in the Northwest and beyond for today. The projected move-in date for the New Mills Memorial Hospital has reportedly been moved up quite a bit by the Northern Health Authority. The date where the physical move will be made from the old version of the hospital has been shot up from spring of next year to the end of November later in 2024. A similar situation took place with the new Seven Sisters Mental Health Facility, as that move from the old building was also completed quite a bit ahead of schedule. But despite the move date changing, the expected completion date of the project is still the same, which will seemingly be in 2026 and includes the old hospital's demolishment as a way to make room for a new parking lot that is projected to be a lot larger than the current one. An out-of-court settlement of the historic variety has reportedly been reached between the BC government and the Nisga'a First Nation. The settlement is said to have solved three major issues that have come up in the almost 25-year-old treaty between the two sides, according to the Nisga'a government. The new agreement is said to have put limits on how much all hunters can hunt the likes of moose, mountain goats, and grizzly bears inside of Nisga'a territory. One of the other major issues solved by the agreement is clarification on how environmental assessment and protection will affect projects impacting any of the Nisgaa''s treaty rights. The last issue that was fixed by the new agreement is setting up how the provincial government will be conversing with the nation as other groups speak with them on claimed Aboriginal rights within territory under designated Nisga'a treaty areas. After nearly a decade of attempting to get some kind of support, the local governments in northwestern BC are finally getting the funds they desire. The BC provincial government has reportedly fully laid out what has been described as a $250 million grant program that will be paid out over a span of 5 or so years to 21 local governments between Haida and Vanderhoof. Terrace's mayor, Sean Buitash, who was in Victoria along with Prince Rupert Mayor Herb Pond and Smithers Mayor Gladys Attrell to hear the initial announcement, has expressed his excitement with this development.
Now here we stand today with maybe not what we'd call the perfect deal for the Northwest, but definitely a good deal for us. We have not figured out the funding model with the government yet, but we'll see how that rolls out. But this is a significant win for communities in the Northwest, and it's a significant win for Terrace.
Terrace is said to plan on using the funds they get from the plan to improve the city's infrastructure. The town of Smithers was recently host to a hockey training camp that was led by a man who once played in the NHL for the Vancouver Canucks. The camp in question was part of what's called the Tech Coaching Series, a camp that is run once every year in a community that happens to be close to a tech mining operation, and this year's version was run by ex-NHLer and Olympic gold medalist Dan Hamhuis, who himself is from Smithers. And via a partnership with the Canadian Olympic Committee, Olympians are usually brought in to teach too, but Olympic women's hockey silver medalist Bridget Laquette was unable to make it this year. Still, 30 kids in total from across northwestern BC were present at the camp, and it seems like the kids had fun. Parents gave some good Facebook feedback, and Hamhuis also spoke on how happy he was to work with the next generation of hockey players. Vancouver's homeless population could soar by up to 50% before the end of the decade. That's according to a group of housing advocates calling on all levels of government to do more to solve homelessness. CTV's Ben Milger has the details.
When was the last time you did have stable housing?
About 10 years ago.
Each night, Kevin Conrad sleeps in a shelter. For years, he's been on a wait list for social housing.
I've been on for about 4 years, and I heard some people have been on for 10 years, and they have to wait that long. So another 6 years.
That takes us to 2030. According to this report, there could be 4,700 people living on Vancouver streets by then, up from an estimated 3,000 now. The Carnegie Housing Project is calling on the province to implement SRO vacancy control, so landlords can't jack up the rent between tenants.
Whenever a whole building is cleared out for renoviction and there's no housing for people to go to, that's where you end up with another tent city.
As land being leased for temporary modular housing projects like the one here gets redeveloped, oftentimes those units are moved into storage rather than being relocated so people can still live in them.
What's going to happen to them? Where are they going to go? And people could be housed in them. And so we're calling on the city and the province to do something, to find places where we can put people and house them in decent housing.
144 units have already closed. Close to 500 more are scheduled to shutter in the next 4 years.
We've been working with the City of Vancouver to identify where leases are coming up, if we can negotiate longer term leases, but we're also having discussions about what other opportunities there may be to get housing.
The city confirms it has no plans to relocate modular housing to new locations, saying in a statement there are no new TMH sites underway. The TMH program was always intended to be temporary as the city prioritizes permanent housing solutions.
Actually, they look like good accommodations, and people do need them.
Right now, they're the only thing standing between hundreds of people and life on the street. Van Milger, CTV News, Vancouver.
Coming up next, Premier David Eby issued an apology that was 7 decades in the making. Welcome back. It was an emotional day at the BC legislature as BC Premier David Eby issued an apology on behalf of the government that some in the Doukhobor community have waited almost 70 years to hear. But as CTV's Rob Buffin reports, some are still not happy with the compensation offer.
Solemn song fills the BC legislature after the Premier issued an apology to members of BC's Doukhobor community. Some had waited 70 years to hear.
The province of British Columbia recognizes the hurt and the trauma experienced by the Sons of Freedom and by the broader Doukhobor community.
The emotions sparked this rare moment of song in the chamber as well. The apology because government forcibly removed hundreds of Doukhobor children from their homes in the 1950s, confining them in schools in the Kootenays because their parents, members of the Sons of Freedom religious sect, had opposed government policies or refused to send them to school.
It was meant to really destroy the culture, and they did a pretty good job of doing that.
For many, the apology was much too late, but still critical.
It means a new beginning, and not just for the Sons of Freedom, for the full Doukhobor community.
The government also offered $10 million to acknowledge the harm caused. Money it proposes will go towards education, counseling, and archival work.
These people don't need therapy. These people need monetary value to live out the rest of their life, at least with some dignity and respect.
Many victims and their families are disappointed no money yet is going directly to survivors.
That it should go to the families, and that the families be able to use the compensation for whatever way of healing that they choose to.
After his apology, the group put the Premier on the spot, demanding he consider direct payment to survivors.
Would you commit that to us, Mr. Premier?
Absolutely. We'll work with you to make this right.
The survivors say they're hopeful the Premier is true to his word and more consultations will right the wrongs of the past. Robert Buffum, CTV News, Victoria.
A huge decorative lantern designed by an acclaimed First Nations artist and Order of Canada recipient has been stolen from outside the Vancouver Art Gallery. It was part of a display celebrating the Lunar New Year, and the lantern was taken in the dead of night by 2 people who seemed to know what they were after. CTV's Shannon Patterson has the story.
It's the final week of Lantern City in Vancouver, an annual Lunar New Year event celebrating the work of local artists from different cultural backgrounds.
We put these in public places so that everyone can kind of enjoy and appreciate the artistry and the storytelling behind each and every one of these pieces every year.
But one of the 3-meter-high lanterns outside the Vancouver Art Gallery was stolen early Monday morning.
We were very shocked. We immediately contacted Richard, let him know of the situation, and he was also disappointed.
Richard Hunt is a well-known First Nations artist and Order of Canada recipient who designed the lantern that was taken.
So I actually have a picture of it here if you want me to show you.
The colorful motif honors members of his family.
Yeah, I just painted this one and submitted it to the Lantern Festival. So I did one last year I just like the concept of seeing your work in a big format. I actually never got to see the one last year, and I guess I won't get to see the one this year.
The 2 a.m. theft was caught on art gallery surveillance cameras.
I did get to take a look at the footage. It was just two dark figures in the night taking the lantern. One of them scaled the lantern to try and get the cloth off, and obviously they succeeded.
Because only one lantern was taken, event organizers suspect the thieves were after a piece by Richard Hunt.
He's done a lot of great works and has been recognized for his artwork across Canada.
Hopefully they took it because they like it, not taking it down because they hated it. I hope they enjoy it, I guess. But it's too bad that this has to go on in this world.
The theft has been reported to Vancouver Police.
But if anyone has any information or has seen a very large lantern cloth in the city, please do contact Vancouver Police Department.
Hunt's message for whoever stole the lantern?
I think they should return it and hopefully they don't destroy it.
Because this art is meant for everyone. Shannon Patterson, CTV News, Vancouver.
There were tense moments in a terrifying morning for 6 people who woke up to their home burning in New Westminster. Now investigators are trying to figure out what exactly caused the fire. CTV's Michelle Brodoro has more.
It was 6:30 in the morning when Anthony Gomez awoke to this after hearing people banging on the door.
People were screaming, "Fire, fire, someone call 911."
One person trying to use a garden hose to extinguish the flames as they continued to spread. It's a scene 18-year-old Gomez will never forget.
And I see my back patio engulfed in flames, and it was just a crazy scene. And my mom comes out of the room, obviously in a panic.
His mom, he says, at first hesitating to leave.
I told her to back away, get away from there. We have to get out of here as soon as possible. Just forget everything, leave it behind.
Firefighters say when they arrived, the blaze was already heavily involved.
Fortunately, we were able to contain the fire from spreading to the adjacent structures.
Firefighters made sure everyone got out.
We did a quick search of the property and found that there was nobody inside, and the secondary search confirmed that there was no occupants left inside the structure.
Crews rescued a turtle from inside and some cats. Gomez says they have insurance and are staying with family until they figure out what's next. Despite all they've lost, he's just grateful everyone is okay, especially his mom.
That is something that I hope to never relive again.
Michelle Brunero, CTV News, New Westminster.
Turning to tonight's weather, the North Coast is said to be dealing with a chance of rain or flurries and a low down at 0. The Terrace-Kitimat area is said to be getting its own chance of flurries with their low at -7 degrees. In the Bulkley Valley and Lakes districts, projections call for periods of light snow with a low of -20 degrees. On the North Coast, the upcoming week may end up seeing a little sun for a bit before transitioning back to snow, rain, and flurries with a high moving from 4 to 0 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, their week will end up seeing a mix of sun and cloud for a bit, but otherwise be all flurries with a shifting high from 0 to -5 degrees. In the Bulkley Valley and Lakes district, the week for them will instead be pretty much entirely snow, flurries, and clouds, while the high bounces between -7 and 0 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is slippery sections, utility work, bridge maintenance, roadside brushing, and vehicle recovery, and a new traffic signal being installed, plus the Usk Ferry is out of service and the cable car is in effect. Highway 35 and 118 have some slippery sections too. Highway 37 has slippery sections as well, while also having bridge maintenance. 37A has more slippery sections, some slippery sections and limited visibility on the Nishka Highway, and the Telegraph Creek Road has slippery sections of its own. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come is a discussion about new cyberbullying laws. Welcome back. A mother whose daughters have been victims of cyberbullying is hopeful that Ottawa's proposed online harms bill will mean that more protections for children are put in place. But even with that, she still thinks that more is needed. Here's CTV's Mike LeCouture with more.
What I'm seeing out there with the youth, it's very discouraging.
Leah Parsons admits she has a jaded sense of humanity. 11 years ago, her daughter Rhea was taken off of life support after she attempted to take her own life. It was because photos of a group sexual assault were circulated online, which led to intense bullying. And now her other daughter is experiencing cyberbullying.
I have a 14-year-old daughter who has been violently attacked. It's been videoed, it's been shared on platforms, on social media.
She says the platforms won't take the videos down. And it comes as a new Statistics Canada report shows 12 to 17-year-olds make up nearly 1/4 of victims of cyber-related hate crimes. Now, the government's new bill also proposes increasing the maximum sentence for advocating for genocide from 5 years to life in prison.
We need to establish baseline standards to protect the safety of Canadian children and to protect vulnerable people from hatred.
The bill calls for the creation of a 5-person digital safety commission. If within 24 hours of a complaint, an online platform doesn't remove images shared without consent, or if the content that sexually victimizes a child or survivor of abuse remains online, well, the commission can force them to remove it.
The law says it'll only be 3 to 5 commissioners. I'm not convinced that that actually provides the full scope of perspectives that you would want.
In a statement to CTV News, Meta, the parent company of Facebook, says it supports the goal of protecting young people online, adding, "We look forward to collaborating with lawmakers and industry peers on our long-standing priority to keep Canadians safe."
You might be familiar with surges in pricing via rideshare companies and airlines, but now a fast food chain is taking a bite out of that model. CTV's Rahim Ladadi is breaking down Wendy's plan and the subsequently frosty reaction.
The longer the line, the higher the price. That will be the reality at Wendy's restaurants in the United States starting next year.
I don't think that's right.
Why not?
It's gouging.
This price-surging model isn't coming to Canada yet, but customers say having to pay more for a 6-pack of nuggets depending on the time of day isn't fair.
I'm not constantly going to Wendy's, but when I do, I don't really feel like I should have a obligation to hit their price demand.
The flip side, though, is if you're craving a late-night Baconator, you may save some money.
I'm always here for a deal.
The Wendy's company is investing millions in high-tech digital menu boards and says it plans to test a number of features such as AI-enabled menu changes and suggestive selling based on factors such as weather.
When we talk about surge pricing, I don't think we're talking about fluctuations in the dollar amounts. I think we're talking pennies. So in an industry where the profit margins are razor thin, surge pricing makes sense.
Other industries like ride-sharing services, airlines, and hotels already use this model, but Wendy's decision is getting a frosty reaction.
We're already paying enough as it is for everything else, and to pay more just because we're coming at lunchtime, I don't think it's fair.
Industry experts believe if and when Wendy's expands price surging into Canada, consumers will adapt.
The U.S. consumer is much more price sensitive than the Canadian consumer. Canadian consumers are willing to pay for, what they perceive to be a higher quality.
However, not everyone agrees.
The price should be the same, especially with a chain.
Would it change
all
your
the time.
buying habits?
Oh, for sure. I wouldn't go.
Potentially driving away profit. Rahim Ladani, CTV News.
And now we turn our attentions to the latest report on the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is down 29/10 cents, the price of gold is down $1.40, oil is down 33 cents, natural gas is up 8 cents, aluminum is up $11.50. In Toronto, the TSX is down 75.13 points, Venture Index is down 1.13, in New York, the Dow Jones is down 23.39, and the Nasdaq is down 87.56. Still ahead is a story on the lack of knowledge of how much it'll cost BC to host the World Cup. Welcome back. We're roughly 2 years away from Vancouver hosting the 2026 FIFA Men's World Cup, but taxpayers still don't know how much they'll be on the hook for. The province says the cost of hosting the tournament has gone up, but isn't sharing any details with the public. It's something the opposition says is troubling.
We have no idea what the costing is whatsoever. We have a very generic $3 billion identified in contingencies for FIFA, but no conversation from the government publicly as to what this is actually going to cost British Columbians.
Provincial estimates from 2022 peg the cost of hosting 5 games in Vancouver between $240 and $260 million, but 2 extra games have since been added. BC's tourism minister says staff are working on the final numbers. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made an unannounced visit to Ukraine this weekend in a global campaign to showcase international solidarity with the country on the 2-year anniversary of the start of Russia's invasion. Trudeau joined other world leaders in Kiev Saturday, while Ukrainian community members and supporters gathered at events across Canada. Hundreds gathered in Vancouver, including Oksana Gurska, one of over 200,000 Ukrainians who fled the war for Canada. She held a book of poetry dedicated to her partner, a soldier who was sentenced to 25 years in a Russian prison, and said that it's difficult to stay in Canada since her soul is in her home country. That's all of our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.